Snap, click, flash, and pose. Glitter.
Hi everyone, welcome to our student project channel. We're super excited today because we have a special guest, Lizzy, joining us from the UK. Lizzy has an incredible story from her experiences with YWAM in Australia to her current career. We got lots to talk about. Let's dive right in. Lizzy, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, all good. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, let's get started. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience attending YWAM in Australia and how it influenced your life and career?
Yep, of course. Yeah. So Ipo and I met at YWAM. This is going back years now. I'm trying to even think what year it was, but some of you may know YWAM is a worldwide organization, a Christian one. And so you've got a whole range of people coming together from all different nations, from all different countries, backgrounds, skin colors, everything, just to be united for one purpose, to make Christians and to reach people in the world. So that's actually where Ipo and I met. Um, and it's a wild story to kind of think that two people have come from complete different areas, but we met in Australia. And then we went to the Philippines together to do outreach. So for me, like attending YWAM was just incredible. It was life-changing and taught me so much about myself, which I don't think I knew before. It's amazing when the Bible talks about how we're all one body, but we've got different purposes and different jobs. And so, like us on this call right now, we've all got completely different stories, but God can use us all for the same job. And so it's just amazing when you see that in YWAM, because it's like you're building lifelong friends, and you're really engaging with the gospel on a personal level. So for me, it really did influence where I then took my journey in the later years, and then my career as well out of that. So we'll go into a little bit more depth over careers, I think, as we get down the line. But yeah, YWAM was pretty incredible for me, and really grew me into a different kind of person in that short amount of time.
Wow, that sounds amazing. So, what was your journey like during university, and how did it prepare you for your previous job, including your current job?
Yeah, so I don't know if many of you know what you're wanting to do in the future, but for me, I had no clue, like literally no clue. And I've got pressure from parents. They want me to choose something. On one side, you want to get a job which pays well. On the other side, you want to do something you enjoy. And so for me, I picked university just out of what I enjoyed, so out of passions. And I chose to do something called childhood studies. So it's families and childhood studies about basically kids, youth, families, and how we look after them in society, right from education right up to healthcare. It was very kind of generalized and it didn't actually lead into a specific career path. But I just love people so much and love kids so much that I felt like it was the right thing to do. And so, with it being purely based on passions, I studied for 3 years. I stayed at home whilst I studied. So, that was a bit different to some people, which saved a lot of money. I'll say that. But it was purely out of not knowing what I wanted to do, but God used it for what was the right thing. When I did my degree, it was actually during COVID, well, the final year was during. And so I had to kind of it was adjusted quite a bit because a lot of it was in person. And that final year, you're just online and kind of like we are right now. But it worked so well because people were just turned up online, and you're able to do things from the comfort of your home. So there's different ways you can do uni, and there is definitely different paths it leads to. I would personally recommend just doing something you really enjoy because you don't want to be 3 years in and then you're actually not enjoying what you're doing, especially with how much work it is and how expensive it is. But it is so worth doing because the amount of knowledge that you get to learn and the experience and the skills that it gives you, it's really helped me for the next kind of seasons that followed. So yeah, that was my kind of uni experience. It wasn't as wild as some people because I was living at home, but it was good fun and it definitely yeah, it taught me so much about the passions I had for people. And what was interesting with my uni degree was that it was a full mix of ages. So because of the kind of the subject that it was in terms of families and schools and children, and then right through to elderly and care, the people who were doing the course with me were a complete different mix of ages. So some have married with kids, some were literally fresh out of college. And so you got to just learn alongside people who had all different experiences of life, which was pretty cool actually.
Nice.
Yeah, it sounds interesting. How did you navigate the transition from university life to adulting, and what were some of the biggest challenges you faced?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, I think most of us can probably say that when we're little and you're a child growing up, you want to be an adult really fast. But then as soon as you become an adult, you want to just go back. Like you don't want to be an adult anymore because things get so serious when it's paying bills and it's finding jobs and trying to manage everything. Suddenly you've got all these responsibilities you didn't have before. And so during COVID was actually when I finished my university degree. And that was kind of a good buffer for me because it meant that I wasn't straight out in the world. I had a little bit of time to just adjust. But at the same time, there was no jobs at all. So like everywhere I was applying for, it was just nope, nope, nope all the time. And so it was really difficult to come out of university and then try and find a job, even though I had a degree, to then find a job straight away. And I think that is probably fairly normal for people because you have to start somewhere. And so it's kind of like digging and making sure you find a job somehow. Um, and I really do think that there's a point when you become an adult that you actually think, okay, I can manage things now. And you slowly learn how to pay bills. You slowly learn how to sort out insurance and sort out all these different areas of your life because you've experienced it yourself. So it's only through practice and growing and trying things that you actually get to being an adult. But even some days I'm like, I wish I wasn't for the sake of just being easier. Um, but yeah, I do think something that was a big challenge for me was um, the interview process to get in a job. So you have to have a really good CV. Do you guys have CVs? Do you know what they are? Yeah, awesome. So like basically the document which it describes what you've done, all your past experiences, history, your education, all of that put into one document. And then you give that to the jobs that you go to and they kind of read it and they'll decide if they want to take you in for an interview. And it was quite difficult for me to get mine as like good as possible and to make sure that it was something that people would want to hire. And so luckily there was a lot of help out of there. If you're doing your CV now or if you're thinking about doing one, there's so much help on the internet, or you can call different careers areas to help you with that. But that is quite, once you've nailed that, you're then in through, hopefully you'll get interviews to follow. But that's probably one of the most challenging bits, I think, is that kind of transition between the two.
Nice.
It's always tough making that transition. Speaking of
Mm.
challenges, can you share some struggles you had with self-image or any challenges you faced while in school?
Yeah, of course. So I'm one of 6 kids. So there's me, my brother, who's 2 years older, and then I've got 4 younger sisters. So it's a very female-heavy house. There's a lot of girls. Um, and being the oldest girl in my family, I was kind of in a protected household. My parents have been really good to us and looked after us and everything, which has been amazing. But it I didn't realize this till afterwards. When I was in high school and college, I didn't have any friends who were male. I had just literally none. And it wasn't until I went to YWAM where you were put together with a bunch of people and we started to make friends with like guys of different ages and of different backgrounds. And suddenly my whole friendship group completely changed. But I think that looking back now, I've realized that the importance of it to have friends who are girls and guys that you can bounce off of and you can really build relationships with, because we think so differently. As a girl versus a guy, you think completely different. And so I do think some of that probably fed into like the self-image issues that I had because I was just so protected not to talk to guys for just not really any reason, probably just the fact that I was one of so many girls. But I do definitely think that there's an element of it where you can compare yourself to people as well. So the Bible talks about not comparing yourself to anybody. You're running your own race and you run it with persistence. You look to Jesus and that's it. But as you guys are probably familiar, you'll quickly, be looking at what other people are doing at their social media, or looking at the job that they've got, or looking at the family they're in, or the house they've got. Soon you've actually stopped looking at where you're going. You've started looking to your left and your right. And it's almost like if you think about running a race, but the finish line's up ahead, but instead of looking at the finish line, you're looking at the person on the left and the right, you're soon going to get distracted and run in the wrong direction. So I would really encourage that, like, something that I learned was to not compare my life to other people. We're on completely different journeys. Ipo and I are on completely different journeys, but they're both amazing and they're both awesome, and God is using them both for good. So the moment that I try and be like Ipo, I'm actually going to fail because it's not the direction God wants me to be in. And so it's having that focus in your own life of, actually, it's gonna really hurt if I start looking at other people. My life is the one which God has ordained for me to do, and I need to just continue running forward in this race. So I do think there was a lot of time during high school, college, even university, and probably even the past couple of years, where I have been looking at other people's lives and seeing what stages they're at. Are they married? Have they got kids? Have they got this job? Have they managed to buy their own house finally? Like, and then you look at your own life and think, I haven't done any of those things, but I know that I'm in the right place at the right time. So if that could be an encouragement to you guys, I really hope that you can grasp that.
Nice.
Yeah, actually, there's something I read that says like you have to like look at yourself. So it's not about the competition between you and someone else. It's you improving yourself, your own self. So it's, making sure and asking yourself if you are, I don't know, 1% better than yesterday. So it's actually you can grow as a person. So yeah,
Mm.
I I feel that.
That's good. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really good.
Thank you for sharing that, by the way. How do you maintain close relationships with your family while balancing your professional life?
Yeah, it's a good question because, to give you a bit of context, I finished university where I was living at home. I started dating a guy from Nigeria, and he actually lives in the UK, but his home and family live in Nigeria. And then I moved to a different part of England, was actually England. So I live in Wales, but there's also England kind of next door to it. So I moved to England and I lived there for about 3.5 years, I think, until really recently. And so that was kind of through COVID and then different jobs I had. And so I was doing distance away from my family at that time. And I think the biggest lesson that I can probably share is just how important it is to communicate. Like, I cannot put it any other way. If you don't communicate, people have no idea what's going on in your life. And with my family, I used to call them most days. And if I missed a day, I would try and call them at least that week at some point, just to touch base and to keep that relationship going. The moment that I left it longer than 2 weeks, it was like so much catching up that needed to be done that it almost became too difficult to know where to start. And so it's the same with my partner. He's anytime we're a distance from each other, we have to text, we have to call, whatever way possible, but try and make it clear communication because it's just touching base with that person. What the time you would spend in person with them, use that time to just to connect with them, to ask them how they're doing, and to make sure that actually the relationship's still strong because of that. And I think when we are in person together, so right now I'm living back at home with my family for a shorter period of time, hopefully. It's a lot of people under one roof, so that's one thing. But it's just spending quality time together. So we'll go on walks together, we'll sit and have dinner together, and one family rule we've got is to sit around dinner table together, no TV, no phones, and we just talk. And sometimes it's like awkward conversation or not even nice. You don't want to talk about stuff. Sometimes we don't even talk, but it's the fact that we're so present together in that time. And that's really what strengthens and builds a relationship, being fully present, and kind of sacrificing the time you would use elsewhere for that personal time with family. So yeah, I think that's probably the main thing of how to balance that, because when you start jobs and work and the professional side of life, it's so easy to get swept away from everything else and go down that channel of I need to work and I need to earn money and but family and friends are just so important and you just don't know how long you've got them with you. So it's really that it's putting that time towards them and making sure they know that you're there and you're present when you are there.
Wow, that sounds like a lot of juggle. What are some of the most rewarding and challenging aspects of your current job?
Mm. Yeah, there's a lot. I'm trying to think where to start. So my current job, I've changed many different roles over the past few years. My current job is a really new one to me. So I only started it It'll be 2 months ago now. And I'm the assistant to the head of God TV. So I don't know if you know about God TV, the TV channel. It's a Christian channel, and it does distribute things all over the world. So it has bases pretty much everywhere worldwide. Well, not everywhere, but a lot of countries. And my boss is the head of that. So he's the operations director who gets to sign things off, and he says what we're going to show on God TV and for how long and all the rest. So my job is to organize his life, basically. And it's been a huge, huge learning curve. I was not trained for this. I've had no PA training at all. And all I can say that it was purely God who lined up the path and actually led me into this role, because there's no way little Lizzy could have nailed this on her own. One of the biggest challenges I think I've had to learn is just professionalism, and how important that is even in the Christian side or the ministry side of work. So often we can just be friendly, we can be chatting and hanging out, and you get to know people really well. But then you've got to remember that you're paid for your job, and it's got to be a professional side that you're showing. I'll go into a bit more detail soon about previous jobs I've had, but the one just before this job, I was the kids pastor at a church in England. And that role, as you can imagine, is chaotic, but it's also really kind of chilled, because you've got kids and you've got parents, and you just build relationship, you talk, you play games, like it's so much fun. So this role is by far a complete difference. I've had to kind of, put on a good face for some of the days which haven't felt so good. And I've had to work through nights sometimes where, you don't think actually this is not my hours that I'm meant to be doing, but it's professional side to what I used to be doing. So I really think I've had to learn that kind of to put Lizzy aside when I can actually do my work, and then to turn off when it's time to turn off as well.
It's great to hear about the positives. How did those previous roles contribute to your career development and the skills you have today?
Yeah, it's really interesting, because I do think that God teaches us something different in every role that we've had. And I think if you look back on the roles that you've been through in your life, whether it has been jobs or it's just education, or even just like that section of growing up and then moving on to something different, there's something that God has wanted you to learn in each of those areas. And so for me, I think back to like the first job I had after university, when I literally couldn't find a job, and I managed to get one. The first one was in a care home. And so I was working with elderly people who were, quite close to the end of their life, and possibly couldn't do stuff for themselves. They were needing to be showered and needed to be fed in different areas, and medication and that sort of thing. And so God really taught me humility in that time, because he showed me how actually I can help other people, but also we all end up at some point in that stage of life where you are dependent on people again. And so that was the first job that I had, and it was a massive learning curve, because I hadn't had to work in that way before, especially not with people who were, in their 80s and 90s and 100s. So that was the first job I had. And then after that, I did a complete flip, and I worked with babies. So I went from one end of the scale to the other, and I worked in a nursery for it was about a year. And that was just the most beautiful job, because you just got to see these tiny little kids just grow and learn their first words and walk. And it was just so incredible. But in that, like, God showed me how we had to live like children, and how, the innocence that a child has is actually such a beautiful and precious thing, but then it needs to be protected. So that was that lesson for that season. And then I went on to working in a church in England, and the first job I had was actually two different roles. It was media and college. And I was basically just an administrator for both. And so it taught me patience and organization, and how, ministry does need that written side of it. It needs the admin, the organization to work, and for it to actually flow and to grow as well. So that taught me a whole lot about, taking it up a level. Instead of just working face to face with people, there was a whole lot of administration which had to go behind the scenes. And then out of that, I became the kids pastor. And so again, a complete different flip of roles. And you've got this chaotic lifestyle where you've got kids who are just, absolutely wild, but such an amazing blessing it is to be a kids pastor. And so I did that for about 10 months, because I was covering some maternity leave of the previous kids pastor. But it was a testing job for sure. And, that was just in itself. Like, there would be Sundays that I would finish church and I'd be like, oh my goodness, I don't think I could ever go back. It's so exhausting. And then you just do it again. God gave you the grace to go another Sunday. So that was that role. And now I find myself here doing this role, which is a complete flip again, but just such an amazing learning curve. And I think what I did mention before, obviously the professionalism is one thing I've learned here, but also because of the kind of role it is, with it being God TV and the media industry, it's been really important to learn about how media affects the world and how one post that goes up can never really be taken back down. Even though you think you've deleted it over and over, it's still out there somewhere going around. And so I've learned so many things about how precious it is to have photos and things, and maybe keep them to yourselves at certain times because some things aren't meant to be shared. And I've learned the importance of, if you want to spread a word, social media is the way to do it because it will spread faster than you can stop it. And so, yeah, it's just been really interesting because there is so many lessons I've learned over the past 4 or 5 jobs that I've had. And I really think for you guys as well, you'll be able to think of some situations that you've been through where that is a lesson that you've had. Maybe it wasn't even a good situation, but God has taught you a lesson in that season as well. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Sorry.
It's really interesting how each job adds to your growth.
Mm.
You mentioned you like to travel. How has traveling impacted your perspective on life and your career?
I do. I love to travel. I mean, if I could choose my dream job, it probably would be like a travel agent or something which gets to move around, maybe a flight attendant, something where I'm in different country every day. That would be my absolute dream. Um, yeah, where I currently live in Wales is a very small village in a countryside. And so I would much rather be outside in the field, in the countryside somewhere where it's just nature and it's peaceful and there's sunsets and it's animals and whatever else going on. I'd much rather that than being inside watching TV. Um, but I'm also rather the countryside than a city. So Ipo and I met in Perth, which I think was kind of a good mix. It was a big city, but it wasn't like crazy. It was manageable for me at least. And then we went to the Philippines, which was a big city, and taught me so much as well in that area. But traveling is one of my passions, and I think that it's so important for us to get out and to see the world, because I think you guys will be able to agree with me when we say that the best way we learn is through experiences. And so if you're trying to learn about a different country just through Googling it and just through reading books on it, it's not the same as if you actually go and travel to that country and see it face to face and experience the food and feel the weather and meet the people and live in their ways and wear their clothes. Like, you learn so much more because you've experienced it firsthand. And so traveling for me is like the most eye-opening thing you can do. Every country is completely different, and I don't think well, I know I'm never going to be able to visit all of them and to fully live out the experience I want to in all of them. But I have got a bit of a checklist of different countries I want to go through. And I'm hoping that, that we can start flying places a bit further or going on boats or whatever way it is possible to get there. In the Philippines, so Ipa and I met in Australia, and then we flew to the Philippines for roughly 3.5 months, I think it was 3 months. And whilst in the Philippines, I had the biggest kind of culture shock I think I've ever had. Eva will know this because we were like, I was completely, unaware of what the world was like. I was a little girl who just came thinking that everything was harmless and that everybody was nice. And I soon learned that you had to kind of make your way by grafting. You have to get your way through by asking people. You've got to build relationship if you want to get somewhere. And so I have vivid memories of things that Ipo did to save me whilst we were in different countries. There's one time, well, actually, it would happen quite often. We'd be walking down the street and she'd pull my backpack back to save me from like a road or a car or something which was about to, go in front of me. There's so many areas where I was just not sensed to the world at all. I had no idea, no street smartness, nothing. And so, yeah, I do think a lot of that experience in the Philippines was actually, it opened my eyes to so much more. It showed me how people live there and the food that they had, which was so tasty compared to things we have in the UK. Like, it's just, the language and being able to pick up different words and the weather. Oh my goodness. The list is endless. But yeah, I love traveling. I really think that it's the best way to learn about the world.
I want to just chime in on this a little bit, but her and I were partners a lot when we were out evangelizing, and she was the rock star. I literally had to cover all my tattoos, so I look like a nun, like from head to toe because of all the tattoos I have. And so I'm this walking nun in black, but Lizzy, she's like, I don't know, less than half my size. And, there they have like these skin discoloration where they can like go into the store and be white. They
Yeah.
want to be white. And Lizzy was like the rock star. Everybody was just like, thought she was the most gorgeous person in the whole wide world. And, they would just want to touch her and do all these things. And we were told about these skin whitener products that they had. And we just thought it was talk. When you go into the store, it's like a whole aisle full of this product.
Yeah.
And she's
Yeah.
blessed enough to just be born this way. And these people in the Philippines are paying big money just to lighten their skin, because the lighter your skin, it means you have wealth and you're not working out in the sun. The darker you are, kind of symbolizes that you're a poor person, you're out in the sun, you're working hard, kind of thing. So we were definitely night and day.
Yeah, it's so interesting because even that shocked me when I arrived there and people would drive by and they would just stop and stare. And I was like, are they looking at me or you?
Like this, they would be like,
Yeah, yeah, I know. And I think because one thing which we have to understand is in the UK, nobody wants to be white. Everybody wants to have at least a tan. And so we try so hard to fake tan. We try to sit out in the sun. We try our best. And I'm like the palest it gets. There's nothing in me which tans, which is so sad. But so when I got to the Philippines and everybody wanted to be white, I couldn't understand because it's the opposite in the UK. And that's where it's interesting because we were talking about comparison a minute ago and how we want to be, tanned. We want to be like them. We want to be this, and they want to be like me and they want to be white, and two completely different perspectives. And you want what other people have, and you don't realize that you've been blessed with the thing that you've got. And so that was a massive eye-opening thing for me. I had no idea that people wanted to be white. No clue. But I can remember going into the supermarket to buy a face wash, and everything, like Ipo says, everything had something whitener in it. And I didn't want to be any whiter. I wanted to be tanned, but I couldn't find anything which helped.
That sounds funny. What role has learning English or knowing English played in your life, and how important do you think it is for students today?
Yeah, that's a good one. I was actually thinking about this question before because I probably take it for granted how much I know English. It was my first language I learned growing up. And then growing up in Wales, we also learned a bit of Welsh, but that's like only a small percentage of the population actually speak Welsh, so it's kind of a forgotten language. And then when we start high school, we learn either French or German, but again, that's kind of not really pushed forward, which is sad because I think languages are so important. And it's the one thing where if you turn up in a country and you can speak their language, it's like, oh my goodness, the best thing ever. Like suddenly you're brought to a different level of being included in things and you can easily get a job. And, there's so many doors which open when you know the language. And so I do think that if I could go back a little bit of time, I'd probably focus a bit more on different languages growing up. But in terms of English, obviously you guys will kind of be aware of the different countries which also speak English. It's not just England and Wales, America, of course. And then it goes on. You've got people in all different countries who actually do speak English. I went to Sweden not so long ago. And the majority of people obviously speak Swedish, but then I would say probably about half of the country also speak English. And so for me, going there as a tourist, it was amazing because I didn't have to know any Swedish, but it was like a blessing to be able to learn certain phrases, but it also meant that I could easily buy something if I needed to, or I could easily ask where the train station was if I needed to. So English is such a language which does cross over so many countries. Um, and I think that it's such a key thing. If you can nail, certain phrases and nail, like you guys are doing awesome, by the way. But if you can pick up language now, it's the best time to do it because then it'll open so many doors in your jobs. And even if you get a job which is in like Colombia and it's not in English in any way, there'll be a day when that language will come into being helpful as well. So it really is something which is just so important. But I do think that languages are not easy to learn. I think you'll know this for sure. I tried to do German and I can tell you now, it did not end well. There's just so many different aspects of it which you don't think about when you learn a language. And sometimes it's from words which are plural, which means they're more than one. It's like in English, we have an S on the end, and then sometimes we add an ES, and I have no idea why. And then other times we add like apostrophe S, and I still don't know why. And so there's things which you just learn as you grow up. But then when you actually sit down to study a language, it's so confusing and it's so complex. But it is so worth doing. And I think that the younger you can learn a language, the better as well, because your brain is able to just click onto it so fast and you're able to see it in a way which maybe has similarities to your current language or your home language. So yeah, I do think it's something which is so important and it's not easy to do, but it's worth sticking to until you get to a strong, confident place.
Can you share any tips or strategies you use to improve your English skills, especially for those learning it as a second language?
Yeah, so I would say that don't be afraid of getting it wrong, because I think the moment that you try and get everything perfect straight away, you're not actually going to be practicing as much as you want to, and you're going to be worried that someone's going to just pull a funny face at you at the other side of it. Like don't be scared of getting it wrong at all. I think that there is such a grace for people who have learned it as a second or a third or a fourth language. And so just give it a go is all I can really say is like give it your all, give it a go, use your own accent. Don't try and fit into a different accent. Um, One thing which shocks me even to today is within England, so England's tiny compared to so much of the rest of the world, but within England, there's so many different accents. And like even if you go an hour down the road from where I am, they've got a completely different accent to me. And then if you go 2 hours the other direction, they've got a completely different accent. And so maybe that's something that only British people can recognize in other British people. But what I'm trying to say is that use your own accent for as your benefit. Use it as a way which actually you feel confident in speaking this language with your accent. Don't try and be British or try and be English or be American. Just be you, but learn the language with that. And then finally, I'd just say practice makes perfect. Practice as much as you can. Like in the shower, practice. When you're on the phone, practice. If you've got an app which you've downloaded, practice as much as you can. Just practice the language. I learn best through visionary things. So if I have to print out a picture and stick it on the wall, that's how I learn best. Or if I have to physically make something or walk somewhere, I learn best through doing that rather than sat reading a book. And so if that's what you need to do, do it. Print out pictures on your wall of the different words and the vowels and whatever else, or go for a walk and label things as you're walking. Like whatever it is, make it as kind of kinetic or as much as you can with a movement kind of emphasis so that you're able to then pick up that language in an experiential way rather than just through reading. It definitely works. But I know that there's been times when I'll tell you a quick story. When we're in Australia, there's for British people, when you say pants, it's like underwear. And so in Australia, when you say pants, it means trousers. And so there'd be often times that people are like, I'm just going to go grab my pants. And I'd be like, okay, you don't need to tell me that information. That's your personal life. You don't need to tell me. And it's only afterwards I realized, okay, we've got a language barrier here and we both speak English. And so it's just funny, isn't it, how words in one country can mean something completely different in a different country and could get you in trouble.
I think like for an example, boy.
Mm,
Boy is a very, you learn boy, girl. but depending on where you are, like here in America, it's not a big deal until you go to the South.
Mm,
And it's normally a derogatory word if spoken to a group of people. And we won't
mm,
go there, but it's like, boy, go fetch me this or go get me that.
mm,
Then that is just like, what? Kind of
mm,
thing. And I think like even Australia, they use it in a derogatory way with Aborigines.
mm. Yep.
Um, and so again, you're taking a simple word that's used in everyday English, no matter if you're in the UK or in America, but depending on the content and how you use it and in what area you use it, it could be very offensive.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah,
So
that's very
like
true.
for pants, trousers, and
Yeah.
what
Luckily that wasn't too bad, but yeah, it's true actually. It's really true how one word could mean something completely different. And even what I've noticed in English, and I don't know if you've noticed this as well, because obviously the UK is very different to Hawaii and America and all of that. But in the UK, with every day seems to be a new word is being created, and I don't even know where it comes from. But I'm like, one day, I used to think I was one of the cool kids, and then the next day there's a new word that I don't even know about, and I've got to relearn something extra added onto English. And I think that the new generation of kids and youth make up slang terms or terms which are just shortened phrases, really to mean completely different things. But then that means that the older generation have to relearn English again. And so there's all of that side of it, which just is always evolving.
true. I agree 100% because that happens.
Well, thank you so much, Lizzie, for sharing your experiences and insights with us today. It's been truly inspiring.
Oh,
You're
thank you for
muted,
having me,
people.
guys.
Before we wrap up, do you have any final thoughts or anything else you'd like to share with our viewers?
Mhm. Yeah, of course. I think because if I could leave one final thought with you, it would be the impression of how fast time goes. Time literally flies in life, and I don't think you realize it until you're past your 20s and you go into 30s and then 40s, and before you know it, you look back and you think, "Oh my goodness, I had so much time on my hands that it's just gone." And not to be in a negative way, but I just want to encourage you to live your life to the full as much full as you can. And what that looks like for you is completely different to the person next to you. So whether it is traveling, live that life to the full, whether it is loving people and spending time with your family, make sure you do it to the full. Maybe it's generosity or even working and studying, whatever you choose to do. And for that time period, make sure you just get the most out of it. Enjoy it and ask questions as much as you can. Make memories, take photos, whatever way possible. I would just encourage you to make the most of the time. And we spoke a lot about it in this call, but don't compare yourself to people who are the same age or different ages, even people who are doing a completely different life story to you. The moment you start comparing, you're actually going down the wrong route because it becomes so difficult to then get out of that again. And I know for a fact that we've all been called for certain things in certain jobs. You guys are probably going to go on and do incredible things, things which even I couldn't reach out to do. But the Bible does talk about in Ecclesiastes 3, it talks about there being a time for everything. And so it talks about a time for living and a time for dying and a time for health and a time for sickness and a time for thriving and a time for digging things up. It's complete opposites, but it's talking about how much your life has a time for everything to happen and to live that time to the full. And so if we start wishing we had other stuff or wishing we were further ahead or wishing for a job or wishing for this and that, you're actually wasting that time rather than enjoying it. The stuff will come, the job will come when the time is right, and the people will come when the time is right. But the moment that you stop enjoying your right now, right here moment, then you're actually wasting your time and you're not able to get that time back. And so if I could leave one thing with you, it would just be that pure idea that time goes fast. So enjoy it as much as you can, get the most out of it. and just be a blessing to people around you, because you don't know what people are going through, and you don't know how much your life will just impact them, even just being nearby. And so, yeah, that would probably be the final thing that I would round us off with.
We really appreciate you tuning in. If you enjoyed this interview, make sure to subscribe for more amazing content.
Thank you again, Lizzy, and thank you all for watching. See you next time.
Glitter, sparkle, glitter, glow.